The reason you get writer's block, it's always the same reason. It's because there's something you want to write about and you're afraid to. You're afraid, what will my mom think if she reads this? You know, there's this thing I desperately want to write about, but what will my grandparents think of me? What kind of deranged pervert will they think I am if they ever read this story that I have in mind? I can't write that story. I'll have to write something else. And your subconscious says, no, you're writing this or nothing. And, you know, as soon as you accept, you know, that you're going to have to write that thing, you know, whatever it is, you know, and just, you know, and hope that somehow your parents can forgive you. I think I was afraid to write fantasy and horror fiction. I wrote a lot of mainstream fiction, and I think I was afraid, you know, to even though I loved those stories, you know, growing up, two of my favorite writers were Neil Gaiman and Alan Moore, both Englishmen, both writers of fantasy. They worked in comic books, but that doesn't matter. They were, you know, two of the greatest dark fantasy writers of their generation, and I loved that and wanted to play in those forms. I wanted to write comic books, and I wanted to write horror and fantasy. And I think that for a long time I felt maybe I shouldn't go there because my dad has already done so much in that field. And I tried not to, but you know, eventually you're drawn to write the kind of stuff that you love and that you care about, that excites you. And, you know, and I've always loved weird concepts. That's something that I find the concepts of fantasy and wonder and horror have always appealed to me, and I can't help it. I'm always careful not to say too much about work in progress. I think it's better to keep your mouth shut and your head down and finish whatever you're working on. When the book is done, you know, then you have something to talk about. But I do have a new book going. I've got about 400 pages of it. It seems to be going well. I don't think it's going to be, it was 3 years between Heart-Shaped Box and Horns. I don't think it'll be 3 years this time. So, you know, I've got the book I'm working on. I'm also guilty of writing an occasional comic book series called Lock and Key. And I have about 15 issues of that left to write before I'm done with the series. It's been going on for a couple years. It's got a couple years left in it. Another 15 issues and I'll be all done with that. So I got a new book in the comic series, and that's what I'm working on now.
Joe Hill, thank you very much.
Thanks so much for talking to me.